want to welcome everybody to our first public event. My name's Oscar Moralez. I'm the managing partner here at Boomerang Ventures, and we're really excited to be hosting this Fireside Chat. Really excited to have our guests join us, and I think you're going to find a really exciting and interesting panel and discussion, and we'll also make sure that we save some time for you guys to ask some questions. So before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about, for those of you who don't know anything about Boomerang, I want to tell you a little bit about Boomerang Ventures, who we are, what we do. We're a venture studio and a venture fund. We're located here in Indianapolis. As a matter of fact, we have an office right in that back corner. So welcome to any of you to stop by and say hi anytime. We're trying to fill a big need in the Midwest in terms of health tech and providing resources for entrepreneurs and inventors in health technology. So we launched the studio in the fall of 2020. And the Venture Studio works with universities and hospital systems and other individuals to help take their ideas and develop those ideas into products and services that then become companies. The flip side to that is the venture fund that we have. Boomerang VC Fund is an emerging fund focused again on health technology, primarily in the Midwest. And so together, working with the studio and the fund, we help bring these ideas to fruition, and then we help support and fund those throughout their development, hopefully, to success. So it's a good pathway, it's a good model for entrepreneurs who don't have the time, the resources, the experience to really consider. And if any of you want to learn more about Boomerang, there's a number of us here from Boomerang that feel free to chat with us afterwards or set up a time to talk with us afterwards. So just very quickly, I want to introduce our team at Boomerang, and I'll start with Eric Beyer. Eric is a partner and also our chief medical officer. We have Audrey Beckman at the back. Audrey is a partner and our chief innovation officer, and she's also our head of strategic partnerships. And two other folks that are not able to make it with us today, Tony Petrucciani is our chief finance officer and a partner, and David Helmer, who lives out in North Carolina, not able to join us today, but he's also a partner with Boomerang. So at this point, I'd love to tell you more about Boomerang, but like I said, just find any of us and we're happy to tell you more about what we do. At this time, I'd like to really take a few minutes to thank our sponsors. Our innovator sponsors, I'd like to point out by name. I don't know if we're going to have, you can see them right down here, okay? So we have Ice Miller, Gregory and Appel, and Engineered Innovation Group. We want to thank them with all of our hearts. They helped put this, or helped us bring this together today. And without their support, it would be a lot more difficult for us to do this. In addition, I'd like to thank our advocate sponsors, and these are folks that really helped kind of promote and market our event to their networks. And they are Quarles Law out of Chicago, Purdue Research Foundation, Elevate Ventures, TechPoint, and Indiana Health Industry Forum. So if you could join me in a round of applause for thanking our sponsors. Okay, now I promise you, I'm gonna turn this thing over to our distinguished panelists, but I want to give you a little bit of context and tell you a little bit about the story about why we're here today and why we think it's a compelling story and it makes sense to bring this to you all today. About a month ago, or a few months ago, we were actually thinking about how fortunate we are to have the network that we do have. And as we started thinking about some of our portfolio companies that we have, our experience in this community, we started to realize that on our board, we have a representative of the company that acquired one of our technology companies. And at the same time, we have one of the entrepreneurs that was involved in that acquisition that helped to bring that technology to the market is as one of our CEOs of one of our new companies. When a company gets acquired, they, usually the acquisition happens and they go off into the distance and you never hear anything again. But today we have a really unique opportunity to hear from industry perspective, from the acquirer. We also get the opportunity to hear from the entrepreneur, the person that actually helped drive the technology to that stage where it actually became attractive to the acquirer. I think we have a very unique opportunity to hear their story, to hear their perspective, and for you guys to ask questions as entrepreneurs and inventors about things that might be relevant and might be insightful and useful for you in your journey through this process. The theme of today's discussion is the importance of the inventor/entrepreneur in medical innovation, and hopefully we can connect those dots for you today. So SonarMed was the company that was in our portfolio, in our Angel Network portfolio, that developed a technology, and I'll let the panelists tell you a little bit more about that. But SonarMed was the portfolio company, Medtronic was the acquirer, and today you'll meet two of the folks that were intimately involved in that process. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our moderator today. If you'll join me in welcoming Teri Willey. So Teri's a really good friend. I've known Teri for a long time. And as you all know, not only is she a great person, but she's also really well known in the venture community. She's had a distinguished career, not only in venture, but also in leadership, philanthropy, academia, organizational development. She's just been around in so many different ways and contributed in so many different ways to our community. So I couldn't be more pleased than having Teri moderate this discussion. And in addition to that, she's really, really passionate about healthcare, and that's something that we're passionate about, so we share that, and we're really happy to have Teri join us today. Thank you.
All right, and we'll have the rest of our panel here with Ariel, Raj, and Tom. And welcome, and I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves, talk about why they're on this panel, which of the roles did they play that Oscar was referring to with the development of SonarMed, its acquisition, and so forth. And then also, because each of them represent a lot of experience that we all can learn from, if they could give a gift to themselves when they were first setting out of something that they know now that they wish they'd known then, what would it be? So Ariel, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Ariel Mactavish, and I'm the president of Respiratory Interventions, which is an operating unit within Medtronic. I've worked at Medtronic for 10 years now, and previously to that I was at Johnson & Johnson. So I think I'm on the panel because of our role in acquiring SonarMed a few years ago and our partnership with Tom in order to do that, but also have experience in various other acquisitions over the time and divestitures and things like that. So certainly welcome to entertain any questions along the way. I would say that in the sort of med tech world, the larger industrial med tech world, the thing that I think about that I wish I had known back when is that when you come out of school, you kind of think you have a path forward. It's very prescribed, both high school, undergrad, grad school, et cetera, what you're going to do. And then when you get your initial job, you kind of think there should be kind of a road to follow. And there just isn't, right? So the sooner you learn that, the better. You follow your passion, you follow your interests, you network, you meet people, you do different things along the way, and you really see what you're good at and what you like. So it took me a few years to figure that out, that someone wasn't going to just come and tell me, oh, this is what you should do next. That was up to me to kind of figure that out. So I think if I were going to give myself that gift of knowing that earlier on, it would have been helpful.
Hi, I'm Raj Kapoor. I'm one of the pulmonary and critical care physicians at Methodist. In terms of my role here, I think I do serve on the board for the Boomerang Ventures here, do bring in the clinician perspective to the venture studio. One of the other discussions that Teri had introduced of how would things be different if I had known some things earlier. I always say medicine is an art, and there is nothing like earlier and later on, because we all learn every day. So there's never a pinpoint of change that, yes, now I'm a physician. I will say going into medicine was was one of my passions, learned from my dad, who's actually sitting in the audience today. And once I got into medicine, one of the things I learned very quickly is the experience of medicine. The art of medicine is very different from the experience of medicine. And what we all aspire to do in venture is to change the experience of medicine to make it more reliable, accurate, and consistent. Those three words mean very different for patients, for the clinicians, for the payers, for the pharmacists. And how you align all those four people in one is the job that we all strive to do here.
Hi, I'm Tom. Tom Bumgardner. I was CEO of SonarMed, and I'm here on the panel because I thought Tim and Ryan from Ice Miller were going to pay us to be up here. But anyway, no, seriously, the reason I'm up here is because I was dumb enough to listen to my sister over there who talked me into taking over SonarMed and thinking that we could actually fix it and ended up selling it to somebody like Medtronic. It was unbelievable. So that's kind of how I ended up here. And I'm on the panel because I was stubborn. Right, Laura? And what if I could go back, what would I want to know? My college roommate switched from engineering to computer science, and I went, why are you doing that? And he said, hey, I swear there's going to be a computer in every single home. And I'm like, get out of here. Anyway, so that one thing I wish I would have done differently. And the other thing is, no matter what you do, it's going to be all right. You know, in the end, everything kind of works out. But that's it.
So Tom, keep the microphone and tell us, in the SonarMed journey, what was the most surprising thing to you? Was it a nuance in regulatory affairs? Was it an aspect of leadership you hadn't anticipated? Was it how you did your clinical trials? What was the most surprising thing?
Surprising. Some of the regulatory stuff was a little surprising, because I thought, how hard can that be? And then a lot of it's just kind of out of your control, right? And you can't do anything about it. And should have learned a lot more about it earlier. I would have felt more comfortable about it. But I think that's probably, that part. And, how much you have to worry about money. We had to worry about money all the time. And it wasn't just me. I had to worry about money for the people that work for me and for their kids and for everybody else. That's a lot of stuff to have to worry about.
And Raj, how about you? What's the most surprising thing in the course of your career and being involved in this type of medical innovation?
The most surprising thing, which I would say is once you get into the medical innovation part, is I think something, as Tom said, is the regulatory part. My first-hand experience regarding this was something very simple during the COVID times, which is when some of the most significant garage-based innovations happened. We actually came up with a couple of devices, and there was a concern of how we can use it or we cannot use it, and everything was fine. We actually ran a lot of beta testing on it using state-of-the-art innovation simulators. And it basically came down to, well, did the material that you use, was that FDA approved? Did the material that you use, was the engineering quality, did engineering give an approval to it? And we basically went all the way back to the drawing board after spending 2 months, pretty much all of summer, working on that on weekends. So that was a good learning experience. I had done my MBA right before that, 2016 to 2018, and I'd gotten a feel of it during the MBA in terms of how the innovation part works and but actually doing it for the first time and being thrown back 3 months of my life, and that was just 3 months of my life. I think it was a lot more months for a lot of people. That was interesting, but very eye-opening.
And Ariel, you've been involved in a lot of intense and detailed transactions. And in the course of this acquisition, were there things that were surprising to you? Were there nuances in the terms? Were there interesting things about human behavior as the deal came together? Were there intellectual property issues that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that very much came to light with SonarMed in particular, but I think is also part of other transactions I've seen, is the difference between what's expected from the small startup entrepreneurial company versus what's expected within the large corporate world. And like Tom just said, and it's really understanding the motivations and alignment of the smaller company. So they have to think about fundraising and how much cash is on the balance sheet, and then also think about how do they operate quickly and efficiently, and get to solutions, all of them working together to get there. So in some ways, it's very attractive, right? You have a smaller team that's very nimble, and then they can work fast, and I think that's why a lot of innovation comes out of the smaller companies. But then the larger company has a lot more stage gates and quality considerations and regulatory considerations that are just part of the requirements. So it tends to make them maybe more sluggish and challenging. So to have the two different cultures coming together, I think that's the magic of it. You have to be able to speak each other's language and really understand how you can adapt on the large company side, maybe not being as specific about certain requirements or being a little more flexible about things, and on the small company, understanding that there might be certain things they have to do that they wouldn't have had to do as a standalone.
So Tom, where did the money come from?
We put in a little bit at first, my business partner and I, and then, we were all angel funded. So all angel investors, the entire time. And we started off kind of friends and family money. Actually, SonarMed, you guys were, when we came up to meet with you guys were about to file bankruptcy, right? You were talking about that in the board meeting. We came in and, said, hey, we want to take this thing over and whatever. And the chairman came out and told me, he goes, hey, the car stopped. And I was like, what do you mean the car stopped? And he said, well, you were the barking dog chasing the car, and now it stopped. What are you going to do about it? So we started putting together a plan, looked at it, and then we went out and just started pitching to people that, Oscar knew that were already in it. I think Elevate was in. They couldn't put any more money in. Who else was in it? Oscar. We had Hyde Park. They were a big part of it. Crossroads. Who else were some of the, and Queen City Angels. So that was kind of how we started our core, and then it just kind of expanded from there.
So a lot of people in the community that, were supporting you along the way, and you wanted to work with them again.
Yeah. We wanted to work with some of them again. Yeah, that's true. Not all of them, but we did want to work with some of them again. Then we expanded down to Texas, the Baylor Angel Network, I think ended up being one of the largest investors. We were at C10. Where else? I don't know. A lot of them, and some of them were awesome. Some are not so good. So that's the thing. So entrepreneurs out there, you're going to come to a point where we got down to where we had like $5,000 before we did the deal with you guys, before we signed the final thing, we had $5,000 in the bank. $5,000 by the time we did it. And but just be careful. They're going to do due diligence on you. Do a little diligence on them. Especially individual, people. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It should be a two-way street. But if, I could give you any advice at all, you should do that.
Well, good. Is there, if you could share advice, Raj, to folks who start out in one career in medicine, and then you participated in the MD, MBA program and got interested in innovation and so forth. You were interested to begin with. What kind of advice would you have for folks who have a strong medical background or science background but want to be more involved in innovation or product development?
I think keep your eyes and ears and all your senses open, not only to identify the opportunities, but also to identify the pain points to eventually improve the experience for our patients and ourselves. That's the big thing from a clinician standpoint. At the end of the day, I think if you've identified a product, and I would say that for Tom also, if you believe what your product can solve the problem, or you've identified the right pain point, I always say in innovation, there's problems everywhere. But if you can't identify the right question, you're not going to get to the answer. And once you've identified the right question and you've gotten to the answer, then it's a matter of time. You're going to be down to $5,000 or negative, but you'll eventually come back around, because if your product creates value, it's gonna find a buyer for sure.
And Ariel, when there was this opportunity to acquire SonarMed, what was the biggest risk in your mind? I mean, what were you most worried about as far as bringing them in and integrating them into the organization and taking that product forward?
I think, well, one thing before I get to the risk is just to touch on also what Raj said. The fact that we're in medtech, I think, is really a privilege, because the products that we're working on really do have the ability to make such a difference. And in this particular case with SonarMed, it's a difference in premature babies in the NICU. So you have, and the SonarMed team had, and we also got the passion for bringing it out to the market is the most important thing. So I really do encourage all of you with, kind of ideas or thoughts around unmet needs, that when you can create something that really is going to make that type of a difference, we can figure out the business part, So in regards to the risk, it was similar to what I said before. It's just they had, through their small team and the financing that they had available, gotten it to a certain stage. We had to get it to another stage in order for us to commercialize it and to bring it to market, to really understand how we would bring it into hospitals. And we're still in that, honestly, and still in that learning journey today. So we've certainly expanded our customer base and expanded use of the product. It probably hasn't gone as quickly as we thought, and we're learning along the way. But that's kind of that gap between what's there and available and what you can see as the vision of bringing it to the patients, and then the actual commercialization and scaling up, both from a manufacturing side as well as from a commercialization side. Those are the risks.
Well, that's awesome. And you brought up a really important issue, which was why a lot of us are involved in this to begin with, which is you really do care about the unmet medical needs that are there and whether or not innovation can address those. And it sounds like when the going gets tough, sometimes that's one of the things that helps you carry on when you're doing that. So Tom, how did you keep the team together?
We actually kept our entire core team together the entire time. And, it was hard. Sometimes I had to be a pretty good salesman to actually talk them into staying and, hey, we're going to get this across the finish line. I don't know, it was rough. When we first got there, one of our younger engineers, he was awesome at telling us how it wasn't going to work. Whatever we came up with wasn't going to work. It just wasn't, And then so it was cool to watch him, over the years just kind of get to where he started pushing me on how things were going to work. We had two fundamental questions. You brought up questions a minute ago. We had two fundamental questions, and that was, number one, what problem were we really trying to solve? And number two was, how might we do it? And then so they started embracing that, and we just got to where we were going to win. We tried to instill a culture that we just want to get it across that next goalpost. And you mentioned, the difference between the big team and the small team. Well, one of our mantras when we started doing all this stuff with you guys, and we would get on a conference call and there'd be 22 people from Medtronic on the call. No exaggeration. Three of us, right? And so you had to get used to that, and it kind of freaked our team out a little bit for a while, but I just kept telling them, and they would get off the phone, they'd go, they're just wrong about that. And I told them, okay, You want to be right or you want to be finished? You know, and so that would kind of, I had to tell you that a lot. And anyway, we actually loved each other. I mean, we really do, you know. I mean, we had a team that we actually loved each other. We still do. And, you know, we really miss working together now. We got extremely close, even though we were never in the same room. You know, I think none of us were. We were all remote the entire time. But we had a common goal. We wanted to win.
What are the most exciting things on the horizon in this area of innovation, and what do you want to be putting your time and effort into next?
I think for me it is going more to a connected health part. We can all still walk into a hospital and essentially see a patient connected with a bunch of wires, or a patient coming into an outpatient setup, and we still have those wired monitoring devices. I think the innovation, I always tell my biomed engineering students that come to me for their summer courses, and I always tell them, I was like, you can just stand in one place in any healthcare facility right now and identify at least 100 different options for innovation at any point in time. And I think that's the horizon, is you can walk into a particular place, and sometimes you don't even need to walk in. If an Apple Watch can tell me my heart rate, my pulse ox, my blood pressure, why do I really need someone to take my vitals when I walk into a physician's office? If the only thing a physician's doing is talking to me, do we really need to be sitting in front of each other? And that's where the value of medicine comes in. And I think the innovation that's coming up is in the value of medicine going forward.
And what are you looking at now that's the most exciting and think that we ought to pay attention to it too?
Yeah. We talk a lot about the post-COVID situation. So I think both in developed markets and developing markets, there's just, and for different reasons, a big gap in terms of clinician availability, trained clinicians, the ability to use complicated equipment, especially in the ICU that Raj has to use. And so this is, I think, just a great opportunity to fill that in. You know, how do you make the products and devices and the education more available to more people, whether it be in a large hospital somewhere in China, whether it be a small hospital somewhere in Eastern Europe, or whether it be somewhere, you know, anywhere in the U.S. There are the similar needs of making the complex more straightforward and making the workflows more easy, and I think that converges with the technology that's becoming available in terms of AI, and so waiting for smart people to figure those things out, but I think that's where the great opportunity lies, where we just know there's going to be, you know, more and more need to treat people, and to be able to leverage technology to do that better and more efficiently, I think is something that's really exciting to think about.
And Tom, after this one, you didn't stop. You decided to do it again. You didn't decide, this is nuts.
Yeah, you know, the whole thing that you would rather not do again is just raise money, you know, and raising money sucks. You know, for anybody that's out there, there's no other way to put it. It just sucks. Have to go out there and do that. You spend a lot of time, you get a lot of no's. It's like being a sales guy, you know. This one we're doing software, so we don't have the regulatory issues. But when I left, I started running. I was interim CEO for a medical device company called Force Devices, which is a stroke company. They've got a really interesting product for anybody that hasn't seen it yet. You know, they're gonna change the way that stroke detection happens. It's going to save a lot of people from a lot of pain and a lot of disabilities. It's a really interesting product. You should talk to Laura about it after I actually sit on the board now. But we thought about, do we want to do another medical device? And I talked to David about it, you know, what we should talk about today, my partner, and he said, go in there and tell them it's super hard, don't do it. That's what he told me, because it is really, really, really hard. You know, we were just naive enough, stupid enough to think, we can do it. You know, how hard can it be? Like I said at the very beginning, but it is really hard. And then for somebody to come up with an idea and figure out how to make that a tangible product, and then try to get somebody to actually use it and get it to the FDA and all of that stuff. That's amazing. I don't know, what's the failure rate? Does anybody know what the failure rate is on a medical device? I think it's got to be pretty high. It's super labor intensive, costs a lot of money, takes way longer than you ever think. It's just a hard gig. So, my hat goes off to people that can do it and actually pull it off.
So just, our propensity to forget pain, or we would never, do that more than once.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Part of it was they just kept coming back over and over. And I will say, I mean, the joking aside, in the early stage, right, it was a different product, and probably before your time, Tom, when it first came, right, to Medtronic, and so it was a very, so I would say the hook, though, was that it was novel, unique technology that really didn't exist in any other way, and the original idea behind it needed some adjustment in regards to moving from the adult space into the NICU. But I think that was the key point why we do have lots of of ideas that come our way, and different physician inventors or business people that want to explain an idea that they have. And I would say two things. One is SonarMed had actually worked through the idea, and it was an actual workable product that we could see and understand how it would work. It wasn't just a drawing on paper. And then the other one was the true novelty of it, that you could truly see there was a very much an unmet need in this space.
Within healthcare, I think AI has a lot of applicability right now. And it can be anywhere. When we talk about access of medicine, there's not just within the state of Indiana, within the country of US, within the continent of America, but all over the world, the access to healthcare is bad. And when we talk about access, you can't put a healthcare provider in every corner, but if you can create, you can call it algorithms or practice patterns or practice guidelines, which can then be interpreted and actually enacted all the way down to the front line. For that, I think you're going to need some form of an artificial intelligence-based algorithm. I don't think AI alone can solve the problem, but AI augmented with some form of a healthcare provider background can solve the problem because of the nuances that would be present in every nook and corner. So that's one way.
So you bring up a really interesting question. I haven't really thought about it. We are running a home healthcare practice management software company right now, and so we're going to start using AI to help people write reports and write doctor's orders and all of that stuff. But when you said that, I thought, well, wow, I wonder if you could start doing that to do patient treatment. I know it's probably not something that people would like to think about, but I mean, could you gather all this data up and start trying to figure out, what the absolute right way is to treat somebody? That's a really interesting thing to think about.
One of the things I always say is there are billions of genes in all of us, and multiples of all those small A, C, T, G amino acids that we talk about. And every human being is created by a different variation or mutation of those genes. So no two of us are ever going to react or respond in the same way to the same medications. And that's the reason why AI or machine learning based algorithms, or they will all be, I think they're all needed to improve the access, quality, and consistency. But you always will need some form of a human touch involved in that.
So I mentioned already that the clinical the market and the need. That was like the first thing that we were working on, and that they went away and adjusted. And then I think in general, both, not just with SonarMed, but with the other smaller companies we end up acquiring, a lot of it is getting it to a certain stage of commercialization, which does require a certain, regulatory stage gates, ability to have some clinical usage so that you have some clinician input. So you can see that, and I think it's relatively similar across the different larger industry med tech companies. They don't necessarily, they might have a different venture arm that will invest in certain very early stage concept work, but to really get to that point of acquisition, they, like I mentioned, the smaller companies are better at doing this innovation. They have more nimbleness, they have more freedom to do these things. So it's kind of better to get it to a certain point within that smaller group before you put the encumbrance of the large company quality system and requirements in place. So really having the, sort of an initial clinical use, an initial regulatory, either a pathway or even a clearance, depending what the product is, and a thesis in terms of what the market is that's realistic in terms of how the market can grow over time, and that it's really meeting this unmet need that's out there. I think those are the key pieces, and that's kind of what we worked on with SonarMed over the years to kind of get to that point and then to bring it on.
So, so we went on a road show. We pitched to them and when 16, right, Laura? And so that they were interested. We had talked to Medtronic several times. We run into people, and people come and go. That's the other thing, right? Over that length of time, I mean, people are in different roles. In the middle of our transaction, you guys did a big reorg. I mean, we were sitting there sweating bullets through all of this stuff. We were just sitting there praying, please don't let Ariel get out of this company. Please keep Ariel. But so we started off, and the first thing we did with Medtronic was we did limited market evaluation. And, we had this plan. We were going to get all these patients, and they were going to check it out and be in all these sites and all this stuff. And it was going way slower than I thought it should have, And then so I went to our investment banker, and I said, hey, we got to talk to Medtronic. They're not doing anything. He goes, why don't you just shut up and let them see how they think it's going, right? And so they were pleased with what, the limited market evaluation came back with. And so they said, yeah, like you said, it's a good market, good product, looks like a good opportunity, but really just not ready yet, right? So I think after that, what happened next, Ariel? Well, that was later. I think you started some due diligence. Yeah, I remember this now. Okay, so they started due diligence. And we went through probably, it wasn't like full-blown diligence like you would do during a deal, but it was like, diligence. And they came back. I remember sitting, distinctly, I was sitting in a coffee shop, April the 11th, 2018, I think, and got a phone call from biz dev guy, Dave, saying, hey, we're not going to move forward. I almost threw up, literally, And he said, hey, we want to do this. And so we came up with this thing, which was called a punch list. So we spent all summer working on some punch list items, primarily around regulatory stuff. And one thing that we were kind of lacking was our risk analysis and all of that. That's the other advice I would do. Have really serious risk analysis and your whole hazard analysis and really blow that thing out and make it, think about every single way that the device could fail and then mitigate it, super important. So anyway, so we did that one, and I don't know, it didn't seem like you guys were that much engaged, and then I don't know, because we didn't have that much contact with you in the meantime. We thought we were going to kind of work together on it, and we were just kind of on our own. But I've been big company too, so I understand. You got a day job. You guys aren't sitting there thinking, hey, I wonder what SonarMed's doing today, And so, it just doesn't work that way, right? So we're going, wow, just not paying attention to it. And then, so then I get a phone call, I get on the phone with Dave again, and he's like, well, we found a different path forward. And that was when you came up with an idea. They gave us 5 milestones they wanted us to hit. They were going to give us, they were loaning us $7.5 million to really stand up to manufacturing, get a new 510K. I should know all these right now. Anyway, just a lot of things that they wanted done with the product, right? And so I was scared to take that back to the board, Oscar. I was, because I was going, oh my God. Now, I've told them 4 or 5 times, we've got to deal with Medtronic, and then it goes away, and then it comes back, and it goes away. And then, sure enough, the board wasn't too happy about, okay, so you're going to do this again. It felt like Medtronic was just kind of like kicking it down the road, right? But after I don't know if you guys realized it, but after we signed up with you guys to do the limited market evaluation, we were in bed with you guys, and that was it. If Medtronic had come back and said it's no good, we were done. So we were committed to them at that point. We just had to keep doing whatever you guys said we were going to do. And so we had these 5 milestones. They gave us money. We had a steering committee that we worked with them. And then we really started working really close with them. And, we got through, we hit every one of the milestones. Did it 6 months earlier or something. And then they were able to pull the trigger. But in the contract, you didn't have to. We could have gotten to the end of it, done all the milestones, and they could have said, oh, just kidding, And then we would have been stuck going $7.5 million and going, But anyway, we did it all. They went through. What would have been really cool? The first meeting we were in with you guys, we saw one of the meetings, we saw that the SonarMed was a high priority project. It would have been great to have known that, because I'm actually 40, and look what it did to me. But it was, and when we were going through that, right, everything was pivotal. I mean, everything. We felt like if we slipped up, made any mistake whatsoever, it was over. So when you're cruising along like that, and then finally, you guys are old enough to know Thelma and Louise, where they just pressed the gas down on that car. That's what we were doing. I mean, we were just Thelma and Louise, and if we got to the end of it, there was either going to be a bridge or we were going off the Grand Canyon. It was not going to be any. That's the way it was going to be. Interesting journey. We can kind of laugh about it now.
Gotta kick the can down the road to hit a bullseye, right?
Just one thing when you were talking, another point to know is that decision isn't just with us, so it wasn't just me and my team, right? So we had to be able to sell it up to our management and the powers that be within our business development at corporate, which of course they have their own point of view around what's a high. So for us, it was high priority. We wanted it to be high priority, and so a lot of the things we were sharing in terms of expectations were what we knew would be expected for us to actually get the check written in the end. So it's definitely a partnership there.
Yeah, so clearly the team is paramount. And that's probably the single most important factor that we look at. We always say we'd rather fund an A team with a B idea than the other way, and I'm sure you've heard that before. It's really true. I mean, we've seen so many great, exceptional ideas, and it's really sad because those great, exceptional ideas, in many cases, don't make it to market because they don't have the team that is the team that can execute, at whatever stage they happen to be. So it's extremely important. You can't underestimate the importance of the team and also the continued development and growth of that team. And the team changes over time. As the company matures and changes, the team has to change as well. And so that's just a matter of fact that happens. But I suspect that, I'm not speaking for Ariel, but I suspect that, they look at the team as well to be able to execute on their expectations.
biggest difference between working for yourself and working for a big company is, it's all you and you got all the risk. And, if you have to sleep we slept literally on air mattresses in Laura's basement, and we didn't get paid for months, that we took pay cuts and deferred income and everything else. And if you're going to get into something like that, unless you're independently wealthy, shoot. It's just hard. You have to, when you go into it, you got to say, okay, we're just going to do it. No matter what it takes, we're going to do it. And not everybody on the team is going to do that, right? And that causes resentment when that happens. Not that I have any resentment about that at all. But, everybody's not going to pull their own weight. And if you're running the thing, you have to kind of be good with that, But you have to get them committed, and you have to keep them committed, or else it's just not going to work. And then you're going to find out really quickly who's better off working for a big company. You find that out, not just necessarily a big company, just any company, right? You'll find that out really fast.
Great. On that note, we're going to wrap up the session for this afternoon. But if you'd help join me in applauding our panelists. We want to thank them for being here, for answering your questions, and then for providing some insights. I hope today's event was helpful in terms of understanding from an entrepreneurial perspective what that journey looks like, from industry perspective, what they're looking for. Afterwards, by the way, we're going to have some networking here, so you're welcome to mingle right here. There's also some tables and chairs back over there, so grab a drink or some food and network with some of your colleagues. But before we go, I want to once again thank our sponsors. I want to thank Ice Miller, Gregory and Appel, Engineering Innovation Group, and I want to thank our advocate sponsors as well for helping spread the word. And thank you all, most of all, for coming out this afternoon on a Friday afternoon. So hope you all enjoy your weekend. Thanks again.